This is lecture 103 in the ABCs of Communism series, and this set of lectures accompanies, it's intended to support volume 7 on communism in Europe, which will appear sometime in the next few months. And our subject this morning is the Neolithic Revolution in Germany and Benelux, that is, the Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg area. And we'll be talking about the Neolithic, Chalcolithic, and early Bronze Age. Now, from Italy, where we last encountered the Neolithic Revolution, it's time to move north through Switzerland to Germany, and then on to the Benelux countries. In my own experience, I flew over Switzerland on my way to Milano on a Lufthansa flight in the spring of 1960, and I exited Italy by train through Switzerland just before Christmas of 1961, on my way to Frankfurt on Main in Germany, from where I would catch a flight to Fort Dix, New Jersey. I can't say I was unhappy about leaving Germany on either occasion. 40,000 years ago, the passes from Italy to Germany would have been very pleasant for a properly armed group of humans to walk, unlike today, when the hills are covered with spider-webbed vines as the natives kill the birds on sight as they fly within range of their shotguns. It was an area I avoided like the plague after my first encounter with the place, and I told my officers to send me anywhere, no matter what the danger, rather than that nightmare. I'd rather shoot it out in Rome than challenge that region. I remember, I think in my volume 1 of my autobiography, I discussed some of my adventures in that particular region. But at any rate, in preparing this chapter and this accompanying lecture, I thought about this route because it is through Switzerland that some of the first agriculturalists arrived in Germany. However, there is one important archaeological fact that I want to mention first, and that is in the Upper Paleolithic of Germany. There we find an artifact that has an important part to play in the main subject of this chapter, and that is the appearance of a special feature that continues throughout the Neolithic. It is the Venus of Whole Fels. That's spelled H-O-H-L-E-F-E-L-S, a feature of the superstructure rather than the mode of production. Whole Fels Cave is a cave in a mountainous range in Baden-Württemberg, Germany. That mountain range, extending 130 miles from southwest to northeast and 25 to 50 miles in width, is named after the region of Swabia. The Whole Fels Cave is a 50-foot tunnel ending in a hall of 6,000 cubic meters. Artifacts recovered include a 35,000-year-old prehistoric art and musical instruments, and in 2012 it was announced that an earlier discovery of bone flute fragments in nearby Gusik Circle cave date to 42,000 BP. An 1870 excavation yielded remnants of cave bears, reindeer, mammoths, and horses, as well as tools belonging to the Aurignacian culture of the Upper Paleolithic. And further excavations from 1958 to 2002 yielded specimens of prehistoric sculpture, such as an ivory bird and human-lion hybrid figure, similar to the Lowenmensch figurine that's 2.5 centimeters tall. In 2005, one of the oldest phallic representations was discovered. In 2008, a team from the University of Tübingen discovered an artifact known as the Venus of Whole Fels, dating now to 36,000 BP. This is the earliest known Venus figurine and the earliest undisputed example of figurative art. This particular Venus figurine is important to us because I think a traveling shaman made it. This indicates that society appreciated things other than those directly involved in obtaining sustenance. That is to say, people had an interest in dumping labor time into some other kind of social time as part of their surplus avoidance. And furthermore, this find is of interest to us because it seems to be the first instance of Venus figurines as part of the ideological superstructure in Germany. This particular expression continues for the next 35,000 years, off and on, in the worldview of the stages of tribal agriculture, simple chiefdoms, and advanced theocratic chiefdoms. As such, the Venus feature allows us to trace the evolution of the German worldview through the Neolithic. In Gusik Circle cave that I mentioned a moment ago, near Blaubeuren, Germany, of the Aurignacian, now dating 42,000 years, with the Upper Paleolithic artwork. It was archaeologically explored from 63 to 2002, and that's where the bone fragments and art were found. Extern stones are made of sandstone in the Teutoburg forest near the town of Hornbad Meinberg. The formation consists of several tall, narrow columns of rock which rise abruptly from the surrounding wooded hills. Associated archaeological excavations have yielded some Upper Paleolithic stone tools dating to or from 12,700 BP to 11,600 BP. And this brings us to the Mesolithic. The German Mesolithic begins in some areas before the Holocene by 15,000 BP. These societies lived well on marshland resources, and as we've seen, the Maglemosian and Azilian cultures were Mesolithic representatives, and there are equivalent in Germany's southwestern regions of the Upper Rhine Valley, Black Forest, and Swabian Jura. Cereal cultivation and animal domestication arrived in Germany by 7,500 BP as part of the autochthonous sociocultural evolution stretching from the Urals through Western Europe. And simultaneously arriving was the full complex of plants and animals originally domesticated in the hilly flanks of Southwest Asia. The latter arrived via the spread of seafaring agriculturalists from the east of the Mediterranean to Italy, and along the way the indigenous people interbred with the new-coming farmers. The Neolithic period in Germany featured permanent villages, ground and polished stone tools, and pottery. DNA genetic studies show modern Germans to be descended from both the immigrants and earlier populations. As the newcomers moved in, interbreeding began almost immediately and continued for several hundred years. A genome-wide ancient DNA data set from the Neolithic and Chalcolithic periods, including 42 from Germany, dates 7,500 to 5,000 BP and proves this origin. Now, from tribal agriculture to advanced theocratic chiefdom society, beginning with the Gusik Circle. In Neolithic Europe, and therefore through the early Bronze Age, we find a tradition of building large stone structures called megaliths. Most of these are tombs, but some are of the rather spectacular impress the sheep variety, such as Stonehenge. The latter architecture is clearly a major undertaking of many tribes, simple chiefdoms, and at least one advanced theocratic chiefdom in southern England, bringing the main construction elements, which are blue stones, from some 240 miles away. In both cases, these projects serve as excellent dumps of communal surplus proto-labor power, that is, regulated, let us say, by dawn-to-dusk collaboration, reinforcing simultaneously the main tenets of the religion of these builders. At Stonehenge, we see the equivalent to ATC pyramid construction, or Nazca lines, elsewhere in the world, and for exactly the same reasons. However, unlike the Chinese, Mesopotamians, Egyptians, Mesoamericans, and Central Andeans, the Stonehenge builders did not move on to statehood immediately. Why? Mainly because there were inherent economic limitations in the far northerly climate that put a real-world cap on surplus social product creation. What are now Great Britain and Ireland would have to wait the coming of Julius Caesar to learn the glories of true class division, slavery, and rule by the army. With the collapse of the Roman Empire West around AD 400, the descendants of Stonehenge would prove they had learned the lessons of Roman class-state society. Germany also features an ATC stage with megaliths. In Germany, there is an important Neolithic megalith site called the Gusik Circle. It dates to the 7th millennium BP and is the oldest solar observatory in Europe. It consists of a circular Stonehenge type of construction with a set of concentric ditches with a diameter of 250 feet across and two palisade rings whose gates align with sunrise and sunset on days of solstice. It marks the beginning of a millennia-old astronomical tradition known also from the Nebra sky disk 15 miles away. And this brings us to the Cermets Well, which is a wood-lined well discovered during construction work at Cermets near the eastern German city of Leipzig. Buried more than 20 feet underground, preserved for millennia by cold, wet, oxygen-free conditions, the timber box at the bottom of the well is 7,000 years old. The Saxony State Archaeological Office removed the ancient well in a single 70-ton block and brought it back to their lab in Dresden. They recovered 151 timbers from the well. These are the Neolithic remains of a large settlement that included nearly 100 timber longhouses. Even after so many millennia, the well's extraordinary state of preservation began to give the researchers clues to the tools and techniques the ancient woodworkers used. To reinforce the bottom of the well, prehistoric carpenters had fashioned boards and beams from old-growth oaks, 3 feet thick, then fit them together using tusked mortise and tenon joints, a technique not seen again until the Roman Empire 5 millennia later. Dendrochronology shows not only tree rings but tool marks. A workshop on the subject was held in late March of 2014 in a forest just outside the town of Egersheim in the southern German region of Franconia. This is experimental archaeology aimed at solving the associated problem. The well's remarkable construction inspired this group of experimental archaeologists to fashion their own tools in order to recreate how the well was built. A woodworking toolkit was made of replicated tools to create copies of ancient artifacts. And this brings us to the site of Pommelt. In 1991, archaeologists began excavating a Neolithic site near the town of Pommelt, that's a Pommelte, in central Germany. The area is the location of an ancient sanctuary comprised of ringed mounds, ditches, and wooden posts. It is a contemporary of Britain's Stonehenge. It is 377 feet in diameter. The journal Antiquity reports that the henge monuments of the British Isles are generally considered to represent a uniquely British phenomenon unrelated to continental Europe, and this position should now be reconsidered, the researchers write in their paper. The uniqueness of Stonehenge lies, strictly speaking, with its monumental megalithic architecture. Archaeological findings at the sanctuary of Pommelt suggest that the ringed structures were venues for communal gatherings, ritual activities, and performances. The team uncovered pits that revealed some of the activities taking place at the site. The sanctuary was in use for 300 consecutive years. The earliest phase was dated at 4300 BP. Researchers found broken bits of ceramic drinking vessels, stone axes, and animal bones. Similar to Stonehenge, the site was not inhabited. People came there for seasonal events, ceremonies, and possibly for important deaths, as the burials suggest. Researchers found unexplained bones of a number of individuals, and this is currently the focus of much speculation. And now we have the Lankan granite tombs, which were used from 5500 to 5200 BP. These are called dolmens in Germany, France, and the British Isles. That's D-O-L-M-E-N-S. The Lankan granites group consists of 7 megalith tombs in the municipality of the same name on Rügen Island in the Baltic Sea. They were erected during the Middle Neolithic when they were used by the funnel-beaker culture. Some were in use until the early Bronze Age. Solitary rocks, forming either rectangles or a stone circle, encircle 3 of them. One has a solitary guardian stone on its eastern side. The dolmens were constructed from glacial erratic boulders and red sandstone. Glacial erratics are big boulders that were gouged out of the land someplace and then carried many miles until the glacier itself melted and just dropped them, left them there in place, so that on a flat landscape, such as you see between Calgary and Banff, you'll see big old boulders just laying there. In fact, you can see all of the important glacial features of Pleistocene geology on that highway from Calgary to Banff. But at any rate, some of these are divided up into 4 compartments. One dolmen showed us 6 such compartments, and in 1969, stone and Bronze Age funerary goods were retrieved, including flint hatchets, stone axes, amber pearls, bronze needles, and necklaces, as well as an abundance of arrowheads and pottery. Pots of the funnel maker TRB type were filled with groceries, and there are long decomposed organic funerary goods. The archaeologists involved ascribe a magical function to the amber pearls, especially the ones of a double-axe shape. All were constructed with glacial erratic boulders. The caps were filled with plates of red sandstone and clay, and the entrance was made from two upright sandstone plates covered by another rock. Other sandstone plates subdivide the interior of some of the dolmens into a hallway with adjacent compartments. For example, the largest one, dolmen number 1, had 3 such chambers on each side of the hallway. Division into 1 to 4 compartments is common, and of course dolmen number 1 with its 6 compartments is the biggest and a rare exception. Such divisions reflect the different ranks in this advanced theocratic chiefdom society. All abundance of arrowheads were found in dolmens 1 through 5. Stone blades were found in dolmens 1, 3, 4, and 5. 2 stone axes were excavated in dolmen number 1. 1 double-edged and another 2 stone axes were found in dolmen number 3, one of the rare Nakum Kamax type. Other finds include a granite rubbing stone in dolmen number 3 and a ganital or Prehistoric in dolmen number 4, a small black flintstone rounded by the sea. The remains of human skulls and bones were found in dolmen number 4. Several of the Lankan granite dolmens remained in use until the early Nordic Bronze Age. In dolmen number 1, fragments of a bronze needle and bronze necklace were found, and in dolmen number 3, a bronze needle with one end rolled up, a bronze finger ring, and part of a bronze necklace. In the early Bronze Age, dolmen number 1 was abandoned and filled with rocks and dirt, with its entrance closed and covered by an artificial hill. Likewise, dolmen number 6, including its stone circle, was covered by a hill 6.6 feet in height. And this brings us to Dinghug, which is a Neolithic passage grave dating 5000 BP on the northern edge of Wenningstedt Braderup on the German island of Sylt. Dinghug is an artificial hill created in the 6th millennium BP on top of a passage grave. The hill today has a height of 11.5 feet and a diameter at the base of 105 feet. The internal chamber is ellipsoid, measuring 16 by 10 feet. 12 large boulders support its roof. The space between them is covered by dried stone walls made up of Zwickelstein. 3 huge boulders weighing around 20 metric tons each form the roof of about 2.5 feet thick. These stones are glacial erratics carried here in the Ice Age from Scandinavia. The spaces between the roof stones are also filled with dry stone walling. A layer of firm blue clay, brought here from the eastern side of the island, mixed with stone fragments, almost completely waterproofs the roof. Above this is a layer of yellow sand covered by a final layer of humus. A passage 20 feet long and a height of 3.3 feet leads into the chamber. Several other stone blocks were found scattered around the base of the hill. Researchers interpret these as the remains of a stone circle on top of the hill. By its shape and ornamentation, the pottery found inside the tomb indicates a date between 5200 and 5000 BP. The Dinghug served as a burial site for a family or clan over a period spanning several generations. And this brings us to the Dwasiden Great Tomb. This megalithic site of the funnel beaker culture was constructed between 5500 and 4800 BP. Of the 54 curbstones, including the 4 guardian stones, 41 have survived. There is a stone half the weight of the uprights and 5 slabs, on which there are 3 large on the chamber and 3 small capstones. Only the central capstone of the chamber is missing. One of the 4 guardian stones at the southwest end, which had already been overturned in the past, has 40 cup marks. One of the curbstones has 3 more. The site is a prime example of the porch dolmen, typical of this region. A 7-foot long porch runs past the support high half stone to the 13-foot long, 5.6 foot wide, and 4.6 foot high chamber. The hall consists of red sandstone slabs, annealed flint, and a clay floor. The rectangular, roughly east-west oriented chamber at the wide end of the frame, with its western entrance and porch, consists of 7 supporting stones. Ingrid Schmidt says, these, quote, Neolithic communities are an expression of the culture and ideology of New Stone Age communities. Their creation and function are features of social development, unquote. The site was painted in 1806 by Caspar David Frederick. His diagrams and sketches are kept at the Ashmolean Museum of Art and Archaeology at Oxford. And now we come to the Ricin barrow megalithic tomb. Located at the German village of Naben, this megalithic tomb was constructed of glacial erratic boulders. It dates 6,300 to 4,800 BP, and it is one of the largest stone graves in North Germany. The trapezoidal enclosure, which originally had 53 large boundary stones, lies just a few feet from the steep coast on the Bay of Tromper Wick, immediately by the cliff top path. The trapezoidal enclosure is 111 feet long and 26 to 36 feet wide, where 39 stones have survived. In the northeast were two transverse dolmens, of which only one is well preserved. It is 4.6 feet high, 6 feet long, and 3.5 feet wide. On the southwest side, two guardian stones in front of the enclosure rise to a height of over 11 feet. Otherwise, they are typical, especially of the Scandinavian dolmens, and similar to the dolmens of Doistien and those in Dummerwitz on Rügen Island. The presence of guardian stones is rare in Germany, but researchers see this as a factor of the proximity of the site to the Danish islands. In 1970, Neolithic finds were made that include 3 cross-cutting arrowheads, a sword, some broken vessels, and a few bone fragments, including 2 skulls. In the northern grave chamber were the remains of an urn burial from the 7th century BP. Between the guardian stones were shards of pottery from the Slavic-era Rani tribe and an Arabic silver coin from the 9th century AD. The German Bronze Age is divided into an early Bronze Age from the end of the 5th to the beginning of the 4th millennium BP to around 3600 BP. It has flat graves with bodies buried in the crouched position. Then the Middle Bronze Age, 3600 to 3300 BP, that has inhumations beneath mounds. And finally, a Late Bronze Age, also called the Urnfield period, from 3300 to 2800 BP, with the deposition of urns containing cremated remains in burial fields. The Early Bronze Age Unitise culture, from 3800 to 3600 BP, includes the Straubingen, Alderburg, and Hotvan cultures, and this culture flourished in the middle of Central Europe in the Early Bronze Age. The name is derived from the Unitise site near Prague in Bohemia, that is now the Czech Republic. Some very rich burials, such as the one located at Lubingen, today part of Sommerda, with grave gifts crafted from gold, prove the AT stage in the mature Unitise culture. The Unitise culture is followed by the Middle Bronze Age tumulus culture, characterized by inhumation burials in barrows or tumuli. Towards the end of the 5th millennium BP, the bronze appears. As you know, bronze is an alloy of copper and tin, and occasionally arsenic or antimony, and later above all tin. This ATC stage features the region involved in trade for the copper ore and the emergence of the technology for working bronze. The other common archaeological feature of the German Early Bronze Age is burial of the dead in a contracted or crouched position. This was inherited from the preceding Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures and proves ideological continuity. The culture that flourished in the middle of Central Europe in the Early Bronze Age is known as the Unitician culture. The name is derived from the Unitis site near Prague in Bohemia, that is the Czech Republic, today. The Unitician burial custom differs from that of all the neighboring contemporary cultures in that the dead person was laid out on the right side of the body with no gender distinction. The design features of pottery and metalwork include the characteristic Unitise cups, that is hourglass-shaped cups, squat jugs, and taller jugs, and by jars with knobs below the rim called Zapfenbecher, 2 handle jars, and exceptional metal forms like the Bohemian eyelet pins as well as special forms of flanged axes, daggers with solid metal hilts, and halberds. The distribution of Unitetian graves and settlements reveals a settlement pattern closely following topographic features. Northern and southern branches are distinguished from each other by the highlands of the Thuringian Forest, Erzgebirge, and Sudeten Mountains. In the northern branch, it is the East Harz region deserving attention, where the concentration of finds occurs in an arc open to the west. These are areas of loess and black earth soils that curve around the hill country. This topography created smaller settlement regions. In the early phase, from around 4300 BP, the culture was uniform, with simple burials in the ground and no special efforts undertaken in funerary practices. Then, from 4000 BP, there is cultural differentiation. The Cermets group has one part of the drainage basin of the lower Saal featuring graves that are carefully lined with stone. The grave goods also reveal regional differences. North and south of the Harz, people continued the tradition of including a number of pottery containers of the grave. However, in the lower Saal regions, diagnostic group forms where the deceased wears certain typical bronze clothing accessories like the eyelet pin and tattooing needle. Another princely form of burial is found in the Lubingen, that is Kreis, Sommerda, and Thuringia, Helmsdorf of Salzlandkreis, and Dieskau of Saalkreis. This latter group is of the ATC stage. These Unitetian princely graves were equipped with many high-quality gold and bronze objects. The graves are characterized by an elaborate construction featuring a barrow of over 100 feet in diameter, and in the center of the barrow is a core of stones surrounding a tent-like wooden mortuary chamber. Metalworking shops and storage warehouses of the Unitetian culture contained bronze objects and were the focus of a trading network that spread over an extensive part of Europe. These Unitetian metalworking shops were controlled by the elite ranks of the advanced theocratic chieftain. From about 4000 BP, they provided finished goods to tribal agriculturalists and simple chiefdoms in the north. At the end of the early Bronze Age, around 3700 BP, these markets to the north dried up as their people began getting involved in the metal ore and production trade. A gradual decline in the Unitetian culture can be seen from around 3700 BP that is connected to the loss of the North European export markets. The Nebra sky disk was sacrificed and buried as the ideology changed, so the symbol of the sun bark on the sky disk no longer played the role it had as a main feature of the ATC unifying the religion. Ranks were becoming classes, and ruling classes needed a religion more specifically tailored to the new world order of slavery. Thus ended the early Bronze Age. The late Bronze Age Urnfield culture is characterized by cremation burials. It includes the Lusatian culture in eastern Germany and Poland from 3300 to 2500 BP that continues into the Iron Age. The Central European Bronze Age was followed by the Iron Age Hallstatt culture from 2700 to 2450 BP. And this brings us to the Benelux Neolithic, and first of all Belgium. As we have seen, the earliest Neolithic farming technology of Northern Europe is the LBK culture. It reached the east of Belgium from its origins in southeast Europe. Its expansion stopped in the Hesbaye region of eastern Belgium around 7000 BP. The Belgian LBK became an ATC, that is, an advanced theocratic chiefdom. Then its archaeological remnant is marked by the use of defensive walls around villages. Limburg pottery and La Hoguette pottery types stretch into northwestern France and the Netherlands. This ceramic technology spread beyond the original LBK farming population of eastern Belgium and northeastern France. Another Neolithic ceramic type arose in central Wallonia called the Blique group. It evolved from the LBK. This ATC society mined flint at Spiennes. There was a long gap before a new farming culture, the Mikkelsburg culture, appeared and became widespread. Broad-spectrum wild resource exploiters of the Swifterband culture in the sandy north of Belgium eventually took up farming and invented their own pottery technology. In the 6th millennium BP, Flanders shows relatively little evidence of human habitation due to the poor conditions for preservation. The Ssin Os Marne, or SOM culture, spread into the Ardennes and is associated with megalithic sites such as Weirs. To the north and east in the Netherlands, there is a semi-sedentary culture called Vlaardingen-Wartburg-Stein complex that evolved from the Zwifterband and Michelsburg cultures. At the end of the archaeological Neolithic Bell-Beaker traders arrived in the south of the Netherlands. The population of Belgium increased in the late Bronze Age around 3750 BP as society evolved from the ATC stage to the slave stage. The first of these kingdoms was the Urnfield. Its barrows are found at Ravel and Hamont Akel in the Campine. Then coming into the Iron Age, the Hallstatt and Latin kingdoms arose. In Belgium, in the northern areas, the Hallstatt and Latin kingdoms arose from local ATCs. From 2500 BP, they traded with the Mediterranean world, and from 2150 BP, the first coins came into use, facilitating trade with the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, it was inhabited by broad-spectrum wild resource exploiters by 37,000 BP. During the Würm Ice Age, the Netherlands had a tundra climate and vegetation. After the end of the Würm, 10,500 years ago, Mesolithic tribes resided near Mugamermar in Friesland. Some made canoes, and the oldest recovered canoe in the world is the Pest canoe. Radiocarbon dating shows it was constructed between 10,200 and 9,600 BP. This canoe is exhibited in the Drents Museum in Ssin. Anyway, hunters-gatherers from the Zwifterband culture arrived by 7,600 BP. Attracted by the riverine and near-shore marine environment, they were related to people of the southern Scandinavian Ertebol culture that lasted from 7,300 to 6,000 BP. To the west, they built camps to hunt winter game, including seals. And in 7,000 BP, we have the arrival of farming in the agriculture in the Netherlands, and it's marked by the linear pottery culture. Agriculture was practiced on the Lus Plateau in southern Limburg. There were small settlements in the rest of the country. These people invented animal husbandry by 6800 BP. Dutch archaeologist Leendert L. Kuijman writes, "It is becoming increasingly clear that the agricultural transformation of prehistoric communities was a purely indigenous process that took place very gradually," quote unquote. This transformation took place as early as 6300 BP and featured the introduction of grains in small quantities into a traditional broad-spectrum wild resource exploitation economies. The Funnelbeaker arrival from 6,000 to 5,000 BP. Funnelbeaker culture was a farming culture extending from Denmark through northern Germany into the northern Netherlands. In this period of Dutch prehistory, the first notable large stone grave monuments called Dolmens were built, and they are found in Drenthe and built in the millennia 6100 BP to 5200 BP. To the west, the Vlaardingen culture dates to 4600 BP and is a culture of hunter-gatherers that survived well into the Neolithic period. Bell-Beaker traders arrived in 5000 and marked the area from 5000 to 4000 BP. Around 4950 BP, there was a transition from the Funnelbeaker farming culture to the corded-ware pastoralist culture. We see this archaeologically as a large archaeological horizon appearing in Western and Central Europe. At that time, the Bell-Beaker traders made an appearance in the Netherlands. The wheel there dates from 4400 BP along with the use of copper. The technology features stone anvils and copper knives. A copper spearhead was found on the Beloui. Trade in copper proves contact with other areas in Europe, as natural copper is not found in the Netherlands. And that brings us to the Bronze Age that dates 4000 to 2800 BP in the Netherlands. And the earliest bronze tools come from a grave of a Bronze Age individual called the Smith of Wageningen. More Bronze Age objects from later periods have been found in Epi and Drouwen. Broken bronze objects found in Voorschoten were apparently destined for recycling, proving the value of bronze in an area without native ores. Typical bronze objects from this period included knives, swords, axes, fibulae, and bracelets. Most of the Bronze Age objects found in the Netherlands come from Drenthe. Large bronze buckets found in Drenthe were manufactured in eastern France or in Switzerland. Drenthe was an ATC center for bronze manufacture, and its trading networks extended a far distance. The buckets were in demand as they were used for mixing wine with water, and there are many finds in Drenthe of rare and valuable objects, such as tin bead necklaces. The Bell Beaker traders arrived by 4700 BP and built a local manufacturing base that developed into the Bronze Age barbed wire beaker brand that sold bronze artifacts from 4100 to 3800 BP. In the 4th millennium BP, the region was the boundary between the trade items we divide into the Atlantic and Nordic horizons, itself split into a northern and southern region, roughly divided by the course of the Rhine River. In the north, the Alp culture from 3800 to 2800 BP was a Bronze Age archaeological culture having crude earthenware pottery. Its initial phase had barrows built between 3800 and 3200 BP, and this phase was followed by a subsequent change featuring urnfield cremation burials by 2800 BP. The southern region features the Hilversum culture, 3800 to 2800, that continues the barbed wire beaker trade relations with Britain. And finally we come to Luxembourg. The Neolithic appears in Luxembourg by the 7th millennium BP. The evidence comes from the south of Luxembourg at Grevenmacher, Dijkerk, Aspelt, and Weiler-Latour. Their dwellings were made of tree trunks and walled by mud-clad wickerwork. Their roofs made of thatched reeds and straw. Pottery from this period has been found near Remerschen. There are a number of Bronze Age sites dating back to the period between the 33rd and 28th century BP that have houses and artifacts including pottery, knives, and jewelry. The sites include Nospelt, Dalheim, Mompach, and Remerschen. What is present-day Luxembourg was inhabited by Celts during the Iron Age from roughly 2600 BP until AD 100. The tribe from Gaul lived in Luxembourg during and after the Latin Kingdom period and is called the Treveri. These people were at the ATC stage and became a kingdom by the 1st century BC. The Treveri constructed a number of oppida, Iron Age fortified settlements, near the Moselle Valley in what is now southern Luxembourg, western Germany, and eastern France. Most of the archaeological evidence from this period has been discovered in tombs associated with Titelberg, which is a 64-acre site with houses containing handicrafts. And that brings us to a conclusion of this lecture on northern Germany, or on Germany and Benelux countries. And in the next lecture we're going to move on to the British Isles and the Neolithic Revolution there.